You are on Crocodile's True Stories channel. Enjoy listening.
There's a kind of silence you don't notice until it's too late. The kind that comes after the noise you weren't supposed to hear. That's what I walked into that afternoon. My name's Noah. I work in film production, mostly behind the camera. Commercial stuff. That Friday, we were supposed to shoot a scene in a downtown loft, but something got botched with the permits, and we had to pull the plug last minute. I packed up early, waved off the crew, and figured I'd surprise my wife, Lauren. It was just after 2 p.m. when I got home. I pulled into the driveway and noticed her car was already there. Strange, but not suspicious. Lauren worked freelance marketing, and she often had client calls from home. I figured she was upstairs or on the phone. But as I walked toward the back entrance, the one we usually used, since the front latch stuck, I heard it. The slam. That sharp, hurried kind of slam. Like someone didn't have time to ease the door shut, just forced it and ran. It echoed through the yard and into my bones. Not wind. Not gravity. Someone had been here. Someone had just left. The first whisper in my brain said, "Don't panic. Just look. Observe. Breathe." I stepped inside. The house was quiet. Still. Too still. That's when the smell hit me. Not Lauren's usual perfume. Not even the fabric softener or candle she favored. This was heavier. A cologne. Not mine. Musky, sharp, and definitely masculine. The kind of scent you notice because it doesn't belong. I walked into the kitchen. That's when I noticed the glasses. 2 on the counter. One was mine. A short tumbler we both used for soda or bourbon, depending on the day. The other was one of our wine glasses, the taller kind with the long stem she rarely used unless company was over. This one still had condensation on it, and the rim had a faded smear, lipstick. But not her shade. Lauren's go-to was muted mauve or soft rose. This was bolder, almost tangerine. Coral, maybe? I don't know makeup, but I know her. And that color wasn't hers. The whispers in my brain turned into murmurs now. Something was wrong. I placed my hand on the counter and felt how damp it still was beneath the glass. Whatever had happened here, it wasn't long ago. I called out, "Lauren." No answer. I moved toward the bedroom. The hallway carpet muffled my steps, but in my own house, I knew where every creak was. I passed the guest bathroom. The door was ajar. No one inside. Then I stepped into our bedroom. The bed was a mess. Not unmade. Not slept in. Just disheveled. The top blanket was pulled down. The sheets bunched toward the middle. There was a faint indent in the mattress that didn't look like hers. And on the edge, a black camisole. The silky kind, tossed like an afterthought. That's not how Lauren did things. She was meticulous, especially with her clothes. Everything had a place. Everything was folded, tucked, arranged. That camisole had been dropped carelessly, like someone undressing quickly, not thoughtfully. I turned toward her dresser. The top drawer was cracked open. Her lingerie drawer. Not fully open, not enough for it to be obvious, but just enough to notice. A red lace strap hung slightly out, like it had been caught when the drawer was pushed shut in a hurry. I didn't touch it. I just stood there. Something in my chest started tightening. My throat, my stomach, they locked up like a door with a broken key. I felt this low, pulsing heat behind my eyes, but I didn't move. Didn't scream. Didn't throw anything. Just stood there, absorbing it, trying to find another explanation. And then I heard the front door. It opened slowly, like she was trying not to make a sound. I heard the shuffle of keys, her familiar sigh, the kind she always made when kicking off her shoes. I walked calmly back to the kitchen and waited. A moment later, Lauren appeared. Hair pulled into a ponytail, light makeup, hoodie, and jeans. She looked relaxed. Normal. But her eyes widened for half a second when she saw me. Not in fear, exactly. More like confusion laced with calculation. "Noah," she said, a little too casual. You're home early. Yeah, I replied, not moving. Shoot got canceled. She paused. Oh, everything okay? Fine. She nodded, glanced quickly at the kitchen counter, saw the glasses, and in a flash, she turned her back and started talking. Ugh, traffic was insane just now. I tried to go to that candle shop in Silver Lake, but they were closed for inventory. Can you believe that? I ended up just grabbing groceries. Did you know they changed the layout at the store again? I couldn't find the oat milk. She kept talking, voice bright, bouncing from topic to topic with practiced rhythm. But I wasn't listening to the words. I was watching her eyes, the way they danced around the room, the way she never once met mine for longer than a second. She didn't ask about me, about why I was standing still in our kitchen like a statue. That told me everything. I didn't confront her. Not that day. I didn't accuse her. Didn't make a scene. I said little. Ate the leftovers she reheated. Laughed politely at a story she told about a client's misprinted brochure. She acted normal. Normal enough that it would have convinced me a week ago. But not anymore. That night, after she fell asleep, arm over my chest like nothing had changed, I waited. I waited until her breathing settled into the steady rhythm of deep sleep. I waited until I was sure she wouldn't wake if I moved. Then I slipped out of bed, went downstairs, and pulled out the external hard drive I kept in my desk drawer. Plugged it into her laptop. I knew her password. She never changed it. I backed up her phone. Photos, messages, cloud links, everything. I didn't even open any of it. Not yet. I didn't need to see it right then. What mattered was having it. Having something concrete when everything else was becoming fog. I labeled the folder with a date, hid it in a subdirectory, disconnected the drive, and returned it to its place. Then I walked back upstairs, slowly, deliberately, lay back down beside her. She shifted a little and murmured, "Love you." I didn't respond, just closed my eyes and stared at the back of my eyelids, listening to the now familiar silence. Not peaceful, not comfortable, the kind that comes after something you can't unhear. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there with my eyes closed, pretending to be part of the stillness while my brain ran every direction at once. Her hand rested lightly on my chest, and with every breath she took, I felt more detached from the person beside me. It's funny. The human brain wants to protect you from certain truths, even when it's obvious, even when the signs are flashing like red lights in a storm. You'll make excuses. You'll convince yourself there's another explanation. You'll grab for hope like it's a life raft, even when you know it's already sinking. I'd done that more times than I wanted to admit. All night, my mind replayed every moment I'd brushed aside, every inconsistency I let slide, every half-truth that didn't quite sit right, but I chalked up to stress, work, or coincidence. But now I saw the pattern. It started with the solo gym sessions. A few months back, Lauren told me she was getting serious about her fitness again. At first, I supported it, even bought her new shoes and earbuds. But I noticed how she started going at odd times, not just evenings, but in the middle of the day or randomly late on a Saturday night. I offered to go with her once. She shut it down fast. "I need that time to clear my head," she said. "It's not a couple's thing." It sounded fair enough at the time. But now I wasn't so sure it was the gym she was going to. Then came the errands. She was always out, dropping off returns, picking up specialty ingredients, finding obscure craft items for a client event. I'd ask if she wanted company. She'd say it was just a quick trip or too boring for me to bother with. I didn't push. That was my mistake. Even at home, something had shifted. She used to light candles before bed, used to put on her favorite perfume even when we weren't going out, just because she liked the way it made her feel. That stopped. No more perfume. No more candles. Her nighttime routine got shorter, quieter, colder. Then there were the clothes. New outfits. Expensive ones that I never saw her wear in the house. I'd see shopping bags in the closet or tags in the trash. When I'd ask about them, she'd wave it off. Oh, that? It's for a client event next month? Or just needed something professional in case a new contract comes through. But the clothes always disappeared. Never hung in her closet long. Never came back from the dry cleaner. And then there was her phone. At some point, I couldn't even tell you when, she started keeping it face down. Every time, even at dinner, even in the bathroom, it used to buzz and she'd glance at it and laugh or roll her eyes. Now, the screen would light up and she'd just stare or flip it over without saying a word. Sometimes she wouldn't touch it at all, like it was radioactive, and it was always silent. No chimes, no vibrations, just light and silence. I once caught her jumping at a notification. Just one, a little WhatsApp ping that lit up the screen while we were watching a movie. She snatched the phone like it was a lit firecracker and muttered, "Just a client being annoying." Except it was midnight. On a Sunday, there were smudges on her shirts. Once or twice, makeup, not hers, showed up on the collar of a blouse. I remember one time, we were going to a family brunch and she changed last minute, saying the first outfit didn't feel right. I picked it up to hang it and noticed a faint mark on the shoulder. Reddish. Lipstick maybe. I asked her about it. She said it was tomato sauce from a salad the day before. I wanted to believe her. I always wanted to believe her. She had become careful, calculated. The little things changed. How she angled herself when she texted, how quickly she'd lock her screen if I walked by. She used to hand me her phone to scroll through photos or playlists in the car. Now it was always in her pocket or in her purse with the zipper pulled. And still, I doubted myself more than her. I'd think, maybe I'm just being paranoid. Maybe I'm overthinking. We've both been busy. We've both been tired. But that day, the glasses on the counter, the cologne, the slammed door, that was the crack in the dam. And now everything was rushing out. That morning, when she got up, I watched her from behind half-lidded eyes. She moved like nothing was wrong, kissed my forehead, hummed a little to herself as she got dressed. The humming hit me hard. She used to hum when she was in love with me, when things were good. Now, I wondered who she was thinking about. After she left, I went straight to my laptop. I connected the external drive I had used the night before and opened the backup. I didn't go digging just yet. I just looked at the size of the folder. Over 12 gigabytes. Thousands of images. Hundreds of messages. App data from things like WhatsApp, Telegram, Signal, even some imported data from a locked vault app one didn't know she had installed. A vault. For hidden photos. Password protected. The pit in my stomach opened wider. I didn't feel rage. Not yet. What I felt was like mourning. Like a long-held version of my life was quietly slipping out the back door, the same way whoever he was had the day before. I sat at the dining table and stared at the screensaver dancing across my laptop. And in that silence, I realized something. There hadn't been a big moment when everything went wrong. No screaming matches. No ultimatums. Just the slow unraveling. Tiny threads being pulled from a sweater I didn't even know was falling apart. And every excuse she'd given me in the past 2 or 3 months now had a timestamp in my mind. A location. A reason to double-check. An alternate explanation waiting to be challenged. The puzzle pieces never made sense before because I was forcing them to fit. Now, I could finally see the picture they were forming. I got up and walked into the living room. Sat on the couch we'd picked out together 2 years ago. The same couch we'd once cuddled on, watched movies on, made plans for the future on. Now, all I could see in my head was that extra glass on the counter. The lipstick print. The way the back door had slammed. And I thought to myself, this wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. This was real. and it was happening right under my nose. But not anymore. This time, I was going to see it through. The next morning, I waited until Lauren left for her early client meeting before I opened the backup. I don't know why, but I hesitated at first, just stared at the folder. There was something sacred about it, like crossing into a place you could never come back from. I think part of me hoped I was wrong, that I'd click into it and find nothing but memes, calendar ***, TS, group chats with her coworkers. But another part of me knew, the part that had noticed the cologne, the lipstick, the glasses, the part that felt her pull away months ago, even before the evidence. I clicked in. The first thing I opened was her WhatsApp chat history. She didn't name him something dumb like pizza guy or Jen from work. She didn't even bother hiding behind a fake name. His contact read simply, Art. Just Art. Not Arthur. Not a last name. Just a name, like a signature. And right beneath it, the most recent message, timestamped just a day before I came home early, read. Still can't stop thinking about your hands on me. That moment on the couch was perfect. The couch. Our couch. The one I sat on just the night before, trying to keep it together while she scrolled through Instagram beside me like nothing had happened. My pulse kicked up as I scrolled up the thread. At first I skimmed. Then I slowed down. Then I froze. Photos. Dozens of them. Her smiling, angled toward him. A hotel room with her heels on the floor, positioned next to a man's boots. A mirror selfie of them both, his hand around her waist, his fingers tracing the hem of her shirt. One photo taken inside someone's car, her hand resting gently on his thigh, her wedding ring clearly visible. They weren't just flirty snaps *TS. These were in *mate. Casual. Natural. Like they'd done it all before. Like they weren't worried about getting caught. And then came the captions. Wish you were next to me again tonight. Couldn't stop thinking about last weekend. I still smell your cologne. Noah's working late. Maybe I'll run some errands. That one hit me in the gut. I remembered that night. I came home late from a reshoot, exhausted, and she had Thai food waiting. She said she'd been running around all afternoon. Dry cleaner, UPS, grocery store. I thanked her. I kissed her. I ate while she sat on the counter, scrolling her phone. She'd been with him. The more I read, the more the timeline clicked into place. 2 months of lies. That's how long it had been going on, at least from what I could tell. 2 months of strategic plans, of midday meetups, of text messages that came through while we were sitting in the same room. 2 months of rearranged stories, of rehearsed reactions, of her telling me she just needed time alone, while she slipped away to someone else's arms. And she did it all with the kind of ease that made me wonder how many times she'd done it before. She wasn't nervous in the texts. She wasn't afraid. There were no panicked lines, no guilt. No, I don't know what I'm doing. She was excited, confident. She flirted like a woman who believed she deserved both lives, the one with me and the one with him. She told him about me. She said I was too busy to notice, that I was kind but distant. She told him I still kissed her goodbye every morning, and they joked about it. I sat back in my chair, the air leaving my lungs slowly. It wasn't just betrayal. It was ridicule. It was emotional abandonment. It was her pulling the rug out from under our entire life and laughing about it behind a locked screen. I clicked into the image data folder. The photos had geotags. One of them, the mirror selfie with her in a red shirt I'd never seen before, was tagged at a boutique hotel 20 minutes from our house. Another, one where she was sipping a mimosa in a restaurant booth, matched a location she'd told me she'd visited for a networking brunch. Networking. I remembered she came home that day tired, said she didn't want to go into details. She'd kissed me on the cheek and said, "You wouldn't care. It was just a bunch of marketing people pitching themselves." Then she disappeared into the bedroom, and napped for 2 hours. She had been with Art at a brunch, wearing that red shirt I never saw again. She probably left it in his car. I kept reading. The texts became more reckless the further I went back. One exchange stood out. It had happened about 3 weeks ago. Art, do you think he suspects? Lauren, no. He still thinks I'm just getting into shape and making friends. It's almost too easy. Too easy. That sentence turned my stomach. I had trusted her. I defended her. When my sister said she thought Lauren seemed distant, I brushed it off. When my friend asked why Lauren never came to game night anymore, I said she was just introverted. She was never at home because she was busy falling in love with someone who wasn't me. And then I found the voice notes. I didn't want to listen, but I had to. Her voice was breathy in the first one. Soft. Almost giggling. I can still feel where you touched me. That drive back was torture. I kept wishing I could turn around. There were 3 more. Short. Int asterisk mate. Emotional in a way I hadn't heard from her in months. It was like listening to a stranger. I saved everything. Copied the full folder to a hidden cloud account. Printed a few of the messages and photos, not for revenge. For clarity. For sanity. I needed to hold the truth in my hands, and no, I wasn't imagining it. I didn't confront her. Not yet. That was the strange thing. The more certain I became, the less reactive I felt. I didn't want to scream. I didn't want to break anything. I just wanted the silence to stay exactly as it was so I could think. I watched her that evening like she was a character in a play I'd seen before. She laughed when she mentioned a stressful client call, then poured herself a glass of wine. She sat cross-legged on the couch in a hoodie she'd stolen from me years ago, scrolling on her phone with a soft expression. She looked peaceful. I looked at her and wondered, how much of that was real? Did she feel any guilt? Did she ever look at me and think, he deserves the truth? Or was I just a convenience now? A safe option? A fallback? Someone who would hold down the financials while she explored something exciting? She caught me staring at one point and tilted her head. You okay? I nodded. Just thinking. She smiled. You think too much. Yeah, I did. But not enough, apparently. That night, I lay awake again, listening to the same soft hum of the fan, the same slow rhythm of her breathing beside me. I watched the shadows on the ceiling and felt the weight of it all press into my chest. But this time, I wasn't drowning in questions. I had the answers. There was no ambiguity left, no mystery to solve, no theory to explore. I knew what she did. I knew who she did it with. And I knew what I had to do next. I didn't tell her I knew. Not the next day. Not the day after. Not even a week later. Instead, I played the part she thought I was too clueless to question. I got up on time. I made coffee. I asked how her day was. I even smiled when she talked about her clients. She had no idea. That was the part that kept me calm, knowing I was already out ahead of her. While she went on thinking she was the director of this little show, I had quietly taken the script and started rewriting it. She still believed she had control. That belief was the only reason she kept slipping. In truth, I was preparing for the end. The first thing I did was talk to a lawyer. I researched in private, on an old laptop I hadn't used in years, one she'd long forgotten about. I kept it offline, no browser syncs, no shared logins. Just a blank slate where I could plan in silence. I scheduled a consult with a well-regarded family attorney a few towns over. We met in a quiet office above a bakery, where the scent of fresh bread masked the sick feeling I'd had in my gut for weeks. She was sharp, experienced, and didn't waste time. When I told her what I had, the messages, the photos, the geotags, she leaned back in her chair and nodded slowly. You're in a very strong position, she said, especially if the property and accounts are mostly in your name. They were. Lauren had never wanted to deal with finances. That had always been my department. At the time, I thought it was trust. Now I realized it had been detachment. She kept herself distant in every way that counted. The lawyer outlined my options. No-fault divorce was always cleaner, but with proof of infidelity and financial misconduct, using marital funds for hotels, meals, gifts. I had leverage. A lot of it. We started the paperwork that same week. Meanwhile, I began quietly moving money. Nothing drastic. Just subtle transfers into a separate account I'd opened years ago and never used. A little here, a little there. Enough that it wouldn't trigger her attention, but enough to matter when things became official. I also pulled the last 6 months of bank statements and highlighted every purchase I knew wasn't mine. She thought I didn't notice the boutique hotel charge labeled as consultation space, or the 2 dinners at that steakhouse downtown she swore she hated, or the Venmo notes that simply said coffee or for the ride. She never expected me to look, and even if I did, she likely thought I'd believe whatever excuse she threw out. She'd gotten so used to spinning stories that she forgot how quickly they unravel under scrutiny. I backed up more than her phone, too. Emails, cloud drives, even the shared calendar she thought I never checked. She had an event scheduled for the following Thursday, blocked out as brunch with Cynthia. Cynthia, our mutual friend, who I called that same day. "Hey," I said casually, "what are you and Lauren up to next Thursday?" Cynthia laughed. "Lauren? I haven't seen her in months." Of course not. Lauren had used our friends as set dressing. Props for her alibi. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep her rehearsals went. It wasn't just deception. It was strategy. She thought of herself as an actress, and I was just the quiet audience in the dark, clapping when prompted. But she didn't know the house lights were about to come on. By the end of the second week, the petition was ready. My attorney filed it on a Friday. Quietly, without fanfare, we opted for electronic service via email. That would come later, once I was certain she couldn't manipulate the situation first. I prepared a digital folder for her, just in case. It included a PDF of the petition, a summary of the financial documentation, and, because I wanted no ambiguity, a handful of select images from her conversations with Art. Nothing explicit, just enough to remind her that I knew, that I had proof, that there would be no gaslighting, no spinning, no attempts to rewrite the story. While all this moved forward behind the scenes, Lauren acted like nothing had changed. She still made jokes over dinner, still sent me TikToks of dogs in costumes, still asked me to pick up oat milk if I was near the store. Once, she even sat next to me on the couch and sighed. "I feel like we're finally finding our rhythm again." I don't think I reacted. I was too busy wondering what her next move would be, what version of the truth she was rehearsing. Because I knew it was coming. Eventually, she'd feel it. The shift, the subtle distance in my eyes, the way I didn't reach for her hand as often, the way I stopped asking about her day. She'd notice, and she'd try to get in front of it. She always had to control the narrative. Sure enough, that moment arrived. One night, while we were brushing our teeth in silence, she looked at me through the mirror and said, "Can we talk?" I spat into the sink, wiped my mouth, and looked over at her. "About what?" Her tone turned soft, almost wounded. "I don't know. Us, maybe. I feel like we've both been off lately." There it was. I nodded slowly. "Maybe." She stepped a little closer, like she was testing the temperature of the air between us. "I've just been thinking a lot. About what we want. About where we're going." She wants to pivot the story, I thought. Make herself the one having doubts. This was her strategy. Frame it as mutual distance. Emotional disconnection. A grown-up conversation about where we stood, as if I hadn't already watched her fall into someone else's arms in high-definition clarity. I didn't argue. I didn't confront. I just nodded again and said, We'll talk. That was it. She smiled faintly, relieved, like she thought she'd set the stage. She didn't know the curtain was already closing. The following morning, she got her answer. The email landed in her inbox at 7:42 a.m. I timed it for when I knew she'd be at her computer, sipping coffee, checking her calendar. Right before her first call of the day. Inside was the PDF, and the folder, and the words she couldn't twist. When I came downstairs 20 minutes later, she was sitting at the kitchen table, pale and silent, her phone clenched in one hand. The screen was still on. She'd read every word. She didn't say anything at first. Neither did I. Finally, she spoke, her voice hollow. You filed? I met her eyes. I did. She looked like she wanted to say more. To plead, maybe. Or spin something. But then she glanced at her screen again, and the photos she thought I'd never see, and she knew. There was nothing left to say. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I saw her without a script. Just Lauren. No role. No control. Just the consequence of her own decisions. I expected silence. What I didn't expect was how quickly she tried to flip the story. Less than 48 hours after receiving the divorce petition, Lauren stopped playing surprised and started playing the victim. It began with the phone calls. First to her mother, loud, dramatic, punctuated with phrases like blindsided, emotionally abandoned, and he's not the man I married. Then to a couple of her close friends, the ones I knew had only ever heard her version of things. By that evening, I'd already gotten the first "Are you okay?" text from a mutual friend who was clearly confused and being pulled into something she didn't want to touch. I didn't reply. I knew what was happening. Lauren wasn't just reacting. She was planning a counterattack. And she was doing it in real time, piecing together a narrative that painted her as heartbroken, confused, and maybe just slightly wronged. But she didn't stop there. The next hit came from a direction I hadn't anticipated, my workplace. I was in the middle of a production meeting, headphones on, reviewing footage for a new ad campaign, when my project manager tapped me on the shoulder. His face was tight, unreadable. You got a minute? He asked. I followed him to the conference room, still holding my coffee, still in the mindset of storyboards and sound levels. He handed me a printed email. It was from Lauren, not addressed to me, sent directly to HR. She wrote that she was deeply concerned for my mental well-being, that I had been emotionally erratic and increasingly unstable since filing for divorce, that she worried I might bring undue stress or unsafe behavior into the workplace. It wasn't just insulting, it was strategic. She didn't want a conversation. She wanted a paper trail. I read the email twice, then looked up at my manager. You've worked with me for years, I said. Have I ever given you a reason to question my stability? He shook his head. Not once. Still, HR had to follow protocol. A formal note. A quick check-in with leadership. Nothing punitive, they said, just a routine step. But I wasn't about to let it hang in the air like some unresolved accusation. I'd anticipated something like this. Not exactly, but close. And I'd already prepared. 3 weeks earlier, when I began backing up Lauren's phone and pulling financial records, I also scheduled an appointment with a licensed therapist, someone completely independent, no referrals from friends, no shared connections. I explained everything, what I suspected, what I discovered, what I was planning. And over 2 sessions, I asked for something simple and official, a brief psychological evaluation. He agreed, stating that I demonstrated clear, rational thought, appropriate emotional response, and an articulate understanding of boundaries and stress management. I emailed a PDF of that evaluation to HR within the hour. Attached to it was a short, factual message explaining that I was aware of recent marital conflict, that I had filed for divorce after uncovering proof of infidelity, and that the message from Lauren appeared to be part of a retaliatory strategy. HR's response was brief and professional. They thanked me. They acknowledged the context. No further action would be taken. That should have been the end of it. But Lauren escalated. She started reaching out to people we both knew, former coworkers, old college friends, even distant acquaintances she hadn't spoken to in years. I didn't hear what she said directly, but the pattern was clear. People began unfollowing me on social media. Others sent awkward messages like, "Hey, just checking in. Heard things are tough right now." Tough? Sure, but not for the reasons they'd been told. Lauren was crafting a version of events where I had lost my mind, where she tried to fix things and I'd gone cold, vengeful, obsessive. She portrayed me as the emotionally distant husband who had blindsided her with legal paperwork out of nowhere. To some people, that was enough. They believed her because they knew the image, not the truth. I stayed quiet, not out of weakness, but because I knew the long game mattered more than the noise. My attorney drafted a counterclaim. It was clear, thorough, and carefully worded. We included excerpts from the messages with art, **TS of calendar discrepancies, a breakdown of shared account usage tied to personal affairs, hotel charges, Uber receipts, even a document showing she had listed my car, in my name, on a short-term rental app under her profile without my knowledge. That last one surprised me. She wasn't just cheating. She was profiting. We submitted the counterclaim 2 days before her legal response was due. She must have read it that night, because the next morning, she showed up at the house. It was early, barely past sunrise. I was drinking coffee on the back porch when I heard the doorbell. She stood there in a long coat, holding a folder and looking more fragile than I'd seen her in months. No makeup, wet hair, eyes puffy from either tears or lack of sleep. I thought maybe we could talk," she said, voice low. I didn't move. About what? I don't want this to get ugly. It got ugly when you lied for months. She winced, but didn't argue. I messed up. I know that. But we don't have to turn this into a war. That word, war, hung in the air like smoke. She said it as if I'd declared it. As if everything that followed her betrayal was somehow my escalation. "I'm not trying to ruin you, Noah," she added. "I just want things to be fair." I didn't reply. I just stared at her until she realized there was nothing left to say. She left without another word. That afternoon, her attorney requested mediation. A quiet admission that her position had weakened, that the story she'd crafted, the one she fed to friends in HR, wouldn't hold under pressure. She'd lost the thread, and she knew it. The social media campaign slowed. The awkward texts stopped. One by one, the people who had distanced themselves began quietly coming back. A few even apologized outright. Didn't know the whole story, one message read. "Sorry I jumped to conclusions. I didn't hold grudges. But I also didn't forget." Lauren's story had been built on speed, on a race to control perception. But truth moves differently. Quiet, steady, permanent. By the end of the month, our legal teams had met twice. Her demands shrank. Her tone softened. What began as a bold attempt to rewrite the ending had become a slow retreat from the facts. In our last scheduled meeting, her lawyer floated a statement. Lauren is prepared to offer a neutral, mutual separation narrative for any public explanation. I looked at my attorney, then back at him. "I'm not interested in crafting a narrative," I said. "She already tried that." The lawyer nodded slowly, said nothing more. Lauren didn't try again. The damage was done, but it wasn't mine.